Hello, world, and welcome to our podcast. This is No Brainer. I'm your host, Zach, with my co-host, D-Rex. He's been upgraded. He was my sidekick. Now he's my co-host. I got scolded last time when I called him. What did I call you last time?
Last week, you I don't want to say downgraded or degraded me to
downgraded
from co-host. Like you couldn't even say co, right? Co-host number 2, right? To sidekick.
Sidekick. I called you. All right, I called you. Well, wow. You are my co-host. You are my podcast partner in crime. How about that?
That's amazing.
Tonight we've got 2 fabulous guests. First, we'll start with ladies. If you guys haven't met or never watched Political No Brainer, my elderly podcast, then you don't know LA. But LA is my beloved, my bride, my beautiful wife. And then we have a very good friend of the show, Coach B, Darryl Blackall. Yay. Yay. And tonight, folks, y'all about to get educated by educators. We've got 2 educators on here. Darryl and my wife taught together years ago at Lake County's, call it the school for the bad children, alternative school. Alternative, right? Is that the right?
Yes,
right.
Alternative,
yeah.
It's for the hoodlums.
Is that a good school or a hood school?
Yes.
Yes.
All of the above.
Yes. And that's where they met. That's where I met Darryl. Darryl, we met shortly before I had brain surgery, didn't we?
I started there in 2015.
Oh, all right. It was long before I had brain surgery.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a bit. Yeah.
But Darryl actually came and visited me in the hospital after I had brain surgery. I don't really remember. Maybe I
had to lie and tell him I was your brother, and that's how I got in.
It's believable. I had to be. They made me.
My
they made me
5'5" frame just looks exactly like yours.
Well, what are you going to do? So
you could be twins.
We were like Danny DeVito.
Yeah, like Danny DeVito, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm making the assumption, Darryl, that you're vertically challenged, aka
absolutely.
Short.
Oh yeah, I'm a cross between a leprechaun and a yard gnome, and so so with my shoes on, I'm probably at least 5'5".
Okay. So that's
not true.
Yeah. If he fell down in my yard while I was mowing, it better be in the short section.
Yeah, absolutely.
How tall are you, D-Rex? Derek?
I must be even 6 feet these days. You know, we shrink when we get older, and the hills.
Well, I'm supposedly 6'2", but I think I shrank because I think last
you're
time
taller
I got
than that. I think you're a mammoth.
Mammoth.
Yeah.
No. Have you watched the new season of Reacher?
No, I don't watch that. You know I don't.
Push that.
You know, I've read just about every book, but I've never seen a single episode.
Oh.
Okay. Well, the new season, they got this guy on there who's called the Norwegian Giant.
Okay.
7'3".
I thought he was 5.
7'5", 7'3", whatever. The guy is on the show. He's a total jerk because he's a bad guy.
Right.
But I follow him on Instagram, and he's actually hilarious. Him and Eddie Hall do funny stuff. Eddie Hall's like the world's strongest man.
Okay.
And him and Eddie Hall, they got one of those like mini Coopers, and they
whoa. Is this Brian Shaw?
No, not Brian Shaw.
Okay,
Brian's a big boy. Him and Brian and Eddie Hall do a lot of stuff together. No, this guy, what's it, LorriAnn? IMDb, please.
I'm gonna look it up.
My wife is IMDb plus.
It's not the real famous guy from Game of Thrones, right?
That's the Mountain.
Right.
It's not the Mountain. Although he is a giant, but this guy is. LorriAnn's going to look him up. What's his name? He's hilarious. He's a good guy. I probably should know his name because I've watched all the new. But anyway, Reacher. Not that we are supported by Reacher, but we are promoted.
Oliver Richards.
Oliver Richards is his name. How tall is he?
Alan Richardson and Oliver Richards.
Does it say?
Oh yeah. He's huge.
Yeah, he stands next to. All right, Darryl, you're 5'5", I'm 6'2", so he'll stand next to Alan Richardson, the guy who plays Reacher, who's 6'3", and he makes like us standing next to each other.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he's a giant.
I give good belly button hugs, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So tonight we're going to dive into the demise and hopefully resurrection of education. We're going to come up with some ideas, some chats, some discussions, because we've got, I think, and I've been around my wife for a long time. She's been in education now 18 years.
Yeah, 18, 19.
18, 19, something like that. And I've been around her for most of them. And she's worked at some of the rougher schools. And Darryl, you've worked at 2 of the rougher schools with her.
Yeah.
Although they're good schools, right? They're
They're
good
good
kids.
schools.
They are.
They are. They're good kids. Every kid. How many kids did we take to church? They all were nice to. They were very respectful. Their grandmoms taught them well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the thing that I see, or the current reoccurrence I see at these schools, is I believe these children are the forgotten children. They're the ones that are, you're a bad boy, you're terrible, your grades are terrible, whatever, go away. We'll send them to this school, we'll send them to that school, and we forgot about them. And I feel that I wasn't a bad kid when I was a child, but I was in my opinion, I was a forgotten child because I had ADHD and all that other dyslexia and everything. And they really didn't know what that was back in the 80s. They thought I was he's had too much sugar and he's a disruptive child. And if what they had done was done a little research or studying or talked to me, maybe they would have found out that I was just bored. You guys were not, I was not challenged. And I think a lot of these kids get in trouble nowadays because a lot of schools, and correct me if I'm wrong, are teaching to the test and they're not challenging these kids. And the kids aren't challenged enough. One of my favorite classes was woodshop. I did try auto shop. I didn't like auto shop because I'm not numbers and science and stuff like that. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why. But woodshop made sense. And I was using my hands and I had to pay attention and I cut my fingers off. I have 10 fingers. I didn't lose any digits or anything. And it challenged me and I did very well in it, just like I did well in PE. Now I was, I wouldn't say I was a super jock in high school, but I was athletic and I better have done well in PE. That would have been terrible. How are you going to fail PE? But I just feel that there's something that needs to be done. And I don't know how it can be addressed or challenged to help these children not become the forgotten children and teach them how to become the superstars they're born to be. Because every child, I believe, has the opportunity to become a superstar. And what do we do? Where do we go?
I thought we
LorriAnn?
kind of touched on this last time when we had Darryl on, in regard to specifically with messaging, right? The messaging a child receives in the household prior to education,
Right.
During education versus, we talked about you specifically, right? Because you're way too happy all the time. And it's a problem, a good problem. And then we compare that to someone who's been brought up with low self-esteem, negative self-messaging. And
I take happy pills in the morning.
well, that's fantastic. Whatever you got to do to get you by. But we touched on that to some extent, and I don't know what we'll go into it tonight. But when you say forgotten children, are we just talking because their home is broken, or because they're lower socioeconomic, or because they carry around negative messaging, or all three? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I tend to agree, but we have to address the gorilla in the room.
Why you got to call me a gorilla?
No, not you, dude. But we have to wonder where our family unit went. And the first school is home, right? It's where you learn not to pee on yourself, right? It's where you learn don't touch that, it's hot. It's where you learned all those little things. Say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Don't touch that. Don't stick the fork in the electric socket. All those things. The first school is your home. And if you had 2 or 3 baby daddies that were in that house that were teaching you different messages. If you had grandma is the only disciplinarian you had, grandmas weren't made for discipline, right? Moms and dads were made for discipline. Grandmas were made to give ice cream. So as we start to just realize that our kids from those households come with a different level of needs into our school system, right? Because they don't know how to act. They don't know how to sit. And then the school system says, look, there's a million studies out there that say boys learn better when they're active or when they're allowed to be active, when there's recess involved. Way back in the 20th century, I wrote a paper about recess and math scores for young men and for young boys. And it showed that if you just give young boys 25 minutes of recess and allow them to get out and move during the day, they have better math scores than the kids who are just doing what we do today. Come in here,
Right.
sit down, you got 5 minutes between classes. So I think we have to go back and look at a few of the things that we're doing and then make some adjustments, right? Put a little bit more on our parents to say, hey man, don't put all that on teachers. Teachers are here to teach, right? We're not here to teach them manners. We're not here to teach them identity. We're not here to teach them even morals. I just want to teach them why X equals 6. So it's tough. The school's been asked to do a lot. Everything from busing to food to everything, right? I mean, we
Right.
give everything a pencil. So when do we? At what point do we say no? School, this is what you do, right? And so there's just a lot of work to do.
So I agree with you on that, but at home, parents weren't teaching their kids those simple things like yes, ma'am, no, sir, shaking hands and things like that. So, part of Pastor Joe's vision when starting the school was he wanted to make sure character was equally. So the school's built on 3 pillars. Spiritualization's number 1. Without the spiritual, it doesn't matter how much education you have or character. If you don't have Jesus at the center of everything, you're going to fall apart. 2 is character. And then 3rd comes education. Because if you get the spiritual and the character right, the education is going to come. So we focus on that. The first week of school is teaching them that when an adult enters the room, you stand and you greet the adult. You look them in the eye, you shake hands. I mean, we practice that. And so we have them, they walk through the church that we're in and they were adults and they'd walk by and they'd go, good afternoon, sir. And the guy would keep walking and they'd say it again. And he'd turn around and he goes, oh, are they talking to me? I said, yes. And he goes, like, that was foreign to him because kids don't do that anymore.
No.
So we're trying to bring that back. And I agree with you. Our middle school still goes to recess.
Absolutely.
They still
And
go
they
to
should.
recess. Right. Because they're kids. So we're trying to establish that, in middle school, the last middle school I left before I came to workforce, sex was rampant. Those kids weren't kids. They weren't being kids.
Right.
So we're trying, like, you're in middle school, you're still a child. So be a child.
Right.
Enjoy your childhood and be a kid. So they're out at recess. I do scavenger hunts. We do gallery walks. I have them out of their seat because I want them to have fun while they're learning. And so
Being
that's
grown
really,
is a trap.
huh?
Being grown is a trap, right? Everybody
Right. Well,
wants to
that's
be
what I'm saying.
grown.
Like, why?
It's a trap.
And we like shut down any kids who are like, no, be a kid. You don't need that yet. Just be a kid.
Right.
Enjoy being a kid.
Have you ever taken a child face to face and said, in 20 years, you're going to wish you weren't an adult?
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Don't grow up too fast. Enjoy this time.
I know you don't believe me, but I'm there.
Well, another thing that, I know you guys do this at Workforce is you let the kids work
Right.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
the afternoon. How many of them actually have worked for someone like Derek who's an entrepreneur who would probably you'd probably terrify them kids and they never want to go to work. I'm never leaving my mom's house ever again.
I mean, we did that. I mean, I did that in high school. We had an option for work release if you had study hall periods. So for me, junior year hit, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going anywhere with sports. I want to work. So you could take like 2 study hall periods at the end of the day, essentially. And, if you knew how to get your homework done during school or later, you could cut off and go to work. And it was fantastic. Not only, no, I'm just not talking financially, but in terms of structure.
Right. We couldn't do that to our senior year. Then we were able to get early D because then we had to say, I have a job. And they're like, okay, you can have early D as long as you get your core classes out of the way.
Yeah.
Make sure you're on point to graduate, because the problem is how many of the kids that go to your school or you used to go to your school get a job and they realize, well, I'm making 10, 15 bucks an hour. I don't need an education anymore. But oddly enough, as you know, our beloved child, Ash, he said to me the other day, he says, Dad, I wish I had listened and finished school. He goes, working is always going to be here and I'll always make money. I wish I had my high school diploma. And I said, well, it's never too late, but he thinks it's too late because now he feels he has the pressure.
How old is he?
Ash,
23.
23.
Oh, it is so not too late.
Yeah.
No. And I would love for him to go. I wish he had gone
has
to
2 children to support.
He does have 2 children to support.
Well, then it's
he's-
definitely
still nice
a lot
to
complicated than it used to be.
We're all a product. We're all a product of our choices, but it doesn't mean we can't improve the hand that we've been dealt. See, the problem with a lot of us is, we're so worried about saying, oh, well, that's privilege. You're privileged, or your parents stayed together, or whatever excuses that you want to say why you're not successful. And the people that you need to talk to about why you're not successful is that same one that looks you in the face when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. That is the guy or girl that you need to have the conversation with, because truthfully, whether you're 23, 25, 40, it doesn't matter. If you figure out I need this education piece, then go get it, right? But then you're going to have to understand you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to get outside your comfort zone to go get what you want, right? And if you want that high school diploma and you're going to have to go to night school, that means you're going to have to work all day and then go to night school afterwards, or you're going to have to sit up in front of that computer and bang it out and those kind of things, When a couple of years ago, I was working every day at school, and I was still taking some sociology classes, because sociology has always been fascinating to me, about why we do the things we do as people to each other, that kind of thing. So anyway, I would work all day, and then I would come home and sit in front of the daggum computer for another 2 or 3 hours. But it was something that I felt that I wanted to know. It was something I felt like I needed. As I dealt with parents and as I dealt with kids every day, I really wanted to know what really makes us work, what makes us tick. Why do people act the way they do? And so it was worth it to me to continue that education piece by just going back. I went back to UCF, did it online, and it was good. But it was long, but it was what I wanted.
Well, how many kids have you had to actually have that conversation with when they tell you, I don't need school, coach, I'm making money?
Well,
do you have to have that come to Jesus meeting?
I do. And I probably have to do this, multiple times a year, because they're still living at home. And so 12 or 13 bucks is a lot when you're really not paying rent. You're not paying the light bill. You're not paying a car note, right? And so they think that, man, I'm making enough money. What am I? But I always say, well, when do you want something of your own? What are you going to do? Bring your wife in here now, and everything's just going to be great? No, I mean, otherwise you're going to work 3 jobs just to be broke, And so we have to get over that cycle, right? And to teach that lesson early, that a high school diploma really isn't worth anything unless you don't have one, and then you discover its value, right?
Right.
So that's where I think it's so important that we have to make education and being smart cool again. We can get a generation. In a generation, we can get a country to quit smoking. It seems like maybe in a generation we could make education important again. And I'm not talking about going to college, because we fell into that trap where you had to go to college to be successful. And then I got a degree in ancient artifact woman studies. and so
sounds awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my minor, by the way. So and you find out that, sure, I got a degree, but it is absolutely worthless, right? And so unless I'm going to be a professor that teaches liberal art, whatever I said. So we have
ancient women's artifacts.
Yes, I made it up. You can tell I made it up as I went along. So we have to break out of that mold to say, you know what? You want to be a plumber, you want to be a carpenter, you want to be a welder, you want to be a mechanic. My God, go after it. Look, I'm just gonna brag on my boy for a second. He just retired from the Coast Guard, right? 20 years in the Coast Guard, he retired.
Good for him.
He worked on helicopters. That was his job. So now he is retired, and now he works for Life Flight, and he still works on helicopters. Except they're crazy now. Except now he's going to work from like 7 to 3 every day, and they pay him like $60 an hour. And so it's like, Dad, I still got a check that hits my account every month like clockwork, and I'm still making $60 an hour. And he's like, I'm going to retire again in 10 years, and then you can just come live in my garage, right? And it's like, yes, right? So I feel like I won the lottery. So
I'm not sure Mrs. Coach wants to live in a garage.
Oh, have you seen their garage?
No, but maybe if it's a barn dominium.
It is. They have a giant TV and air conditioning. That's all I needed.
Oh, well, all right. That's all I need.
So
I mean, and there are kids out there. I mean, Derek, you went to college for business, correct?
Yep.
And it has immensely helped you because you are a businessman.
Absolutely.
So,
but not until I went back after dropping out. Until I actually
could you be where you are today if you hadn't gone to college for business?
No.
Okay.
But so I think I'm unique though, because that was my foot in the door for 2 jobs that kind of propelled me to different titles and levels.
So working for your grandfather, you don't think would have made you who you are if you had stayed with him for a while and then branched off to your own business? You don't think you would have learned enough from grandpa, or you think having college was definitely your shtick?
I think college did a couple very distinct things for me. One, how to get stuff done and manage it.
Mm-hmm.
That's for anyone.
Yes.
2, very key terminologies and core focused, centered, ideology, whatever you want to call it, of business. So enough to where if I talk to you for 3 minutes and 40 seconds about marketing, I can tell if you have a degree or not. Because if you don't say the word value or profit, you don't have a degree because you didn't do a management or an admin capstone. Okay.
Sure.
Because you didn't have the professor that came in the room and said, I'm not a professor, I'm a CEO. If anything you're saying to me isn't interesting, get the heck out of my classroom. Right. Because I make $500 an hour and you're wasting my time and you're not worth my time.
Sure.
Okay, so that makes you learn a little bit. And then probably the other thing was just organizational change, all that kind of stuff. And that's good stuff. But opportunity-wise, ethics. Yes, ethics. But opportunity-wise, it also got me in the door with 2 jobs that propelled me to like VP positions, and like, and so, yeah, if I would have done none of that, done the golden handcuffs, stayed with my grandfathers, I would have been okay. Of course, it's a changing economy right now. So I don't know where it would be down the road, but I would have the opportunity to own that. And, but it's really not that to me. It's about comfort zones. I would have stayed in a comfort zone. So the degree plus the experience plus the different, I mean, it's just, it got me out of comfort zones. Like it made me get out of comfort zones. It made me say, okay, I guess let's do it. Okay, I guess I'll just get recruited and leave this company after 15 years. Oh, I guess I'll just travel all over. Oh, I guess I'll just move, 1,300 miles down to Florida with my wife and sell our brand new home and pack up a truck and spend 20 grand to move down there randomly. I mean, it taught me the value of not doing is riskier than doing. Right. Everyone was like, aren't you nervous to go to Florida? I'm like, I'm honestly at that. And that was at that point in my life. I said, I'm honestly more nervous to not go.
Right.
Because if I don't go, I won't do this. I won't know. I won't have taken the step. And, and that's like, I guess that's college experience and relationships and people and mentorship and coming up in a business and then too much testosterone.
Do you think it would have been worthwhile to go forward and get your MBA, or do you think you're good where you're at?
I was going forward to get my MBA. I took my GMATs and everything. I got enrolled at Central Michigan. I actually started. I stopped because I took an opportunity that took up my time and paid me more than an MBA did. And then, at the same time, my own businesses took off. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I was a little tainted because I had two bosses who were owners that had an MBA. And at the time I thought they were crazy how they I'm like, boy, that made you guys stupider. Now I think back and I'm like, I understand why they did all that stuff. So I didn't, because it just wasn't.
The career path you took definitely was positive towards going to college. Just as you, Coach, you were Coast Guard.
But by the way, if you took me today and I was in today's world where a teenager can't use their hands to do anything, I would go to a community college for 2 years and get a business minor for like 12 grand. And then I would go to a trade school of electrician or plumbing. And I would file an LLC and I would hire 2 1099s and I would pump out $500K worth of job, working 50, 60 hours a week, Monday through Friday, and have my weekends and have my nights off.
Right.
That's what I would do. I would do that. And then I would live off 100 and invest the rest, that's what I would do. Like if I went back and to have, because life isn't about
but we all know, hindsight's 2020.
Right.
It's freedom.
Yeah, of course. Hindsight's 2020.
That's why we believe debt is a sin, right? Because you're a slave to it.
Well, as long as if you put money above everything else, yes.
But you know what I mean?
Yes. So, Coach, you were Coast Guard. Where did you go to college?
UCF.
Okay. So, and you graduated.
Yes.
So you can finish.
You can finish. Yes.
Excellent.
And you can go back and you can get a master's. You can do it. You actually can. Absolutely.
And for your position, it is not necessarily, I mean, it's needed, but it's 100% required.
Yeah.
It's required. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And you went to University of Iowa. And you got your bachelor's in education.
No, English.
English, and then you got your master's in education. Okay. And you needed that to place you where you are today.
Well, yes.
But then you have a schlep like me, who, if I had gone to college, I would have wasted my parents' money. And my father saw the writing on the wall, so he threw me into the school of hard knocks. Now, has that hindered me? Yes and no. Yes, because there's been a couple jobs that I really wanted, and you had to have a college degree.
Right.
Which one of them made no sense because I knew the salesman I would be working next to, which was my very best friend cousin, and I could outsell him 7 days a week, upside down, backwards,
I'm
and
just not
you know.
so hung up
So,
on the concept of school good, school bad.
No, I'm
It's-
not
Cool
either. But
element.
I mean,
I kind of listen to what Gary V.
Yeah.
He talks about school, and Rogan, and there's a couple others who talk about we need the kids who need to go to school, because yes, we need doctors, we need educators, we need lawyers, but we need the kids to learn that there's other things than you don't have to go to college, and you can still make a buttload of money, be an electrician, being an air conditioning guy, being a welder.
well,
Our
okay,
nephew, well, hold on.
Okay, no,
John,
no,
our
hold
son,
on.
went to welding school. I think it was the best thing he did. You know, his cousin went to welding school because John went to welding school, and now he's branched off, got his union card,
National.
Yeah.
national union card, and he's in the Caribbean right now making like $100 an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But our son doesn't want to do that because he's very happy where he is. He makes good money. And he's like, I'm not trying to work 7 days a week like they make him do down there. Great. You know, but if he hadn't, who knows where they'd be.
Well, can we get back to like education? Because
That's what I was getting at.
I want
'Cause-
Daryl's opinion on this. So my oldest daughter, Maxine, was like a mediocre student all through school. She didn't really apply herself. And then when she got to high school, she had a really bad math teacher who didn't do a good job teaching her. So she just assumed she was bad in math. And then the next year she had to take intensive math along with geometry. And so she had a block schedule with this guy who poured into her and kind of built her back up. And then the other teacher walks in and goes, "Oh, you have her. Don't waste your time. She's not going to amount to anything." So she had these teachers like tell her these negative things. So she never believed in herself. So she never even thought college was something she should do.
Right.
Because she was not going to be smart enough. Well, let me tell you. So she goes off to become a flight attendant, and she goes and she learns all about, because they have to learn the airplanes, the ins and outs. They got to learn everything. She got hundreds on every single test, which they were all like blown away. And then she decides she wants to go into real estate.
Okay.
She goes and passes the real estate exam with 100%.
First time.
That a girl.
So
Is she
she's
still in
super
New England?
smart. Huh?
She's still in New England?
No, she lives in Fort Myers. She's now in Fort Myers.
Okay.
She's about to get married in January. But my point is,
She's a Fort Myers housewife.
Because she had some teachers along the way, say some negative things to her, which we all know, like teachers can make or break a student. She never thought she was good enough. And now she's like, there's so many things I would have done differently had I known like I had the capacity to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my cousin is an amazing real estate agent and broker out in Arizona. She's been written up in magazines. She has her own firm. It took her 9 times to pass the real estate exam.
Wow.
It's not an easy test.
No.
No.
She took
I
it
failed
and
it
got
twice.
100% on it. When they walked out, they were like, like they haven't seen this. So she's learned now that she is smart. And then John also, Coach, John, you dealt with John. He did just the bare minimum to get by. He just wanted to
still does
to get out. Yeah, he just was going to do the bare minimum, and he knew right away he didn't want to work with people. He didn't want to deal with people, and he just wanted to put his helmet on and go weld and be left alone. That's what he wanted to do, and which it's worked out for him. Then we have Ash, which another one who has no education, and he goes out and he's busts his butt every day.
Yeah.
Like some of these kids from Ali, they'd get a construction job, they'd see the money and be like, well, I'm making money, I don't need my education.
I make $200 a day. What do I got to go to school
Right.
for?
Right.
And then now we have our youngest who's about to graduate from UCF. She can finish too.
You can finish.
She graduates, but she went for psychology, and kind of along the way realized like she has a love for music, and she's going to be a teacher at RCA next year.
Wow.
She's been student teaching. So, I mean, I had 3 kids all go on different, Maxie went right into the workforce. John went to trade school, and then Jana went to got a 4-year degree.
And it was the
Totally
smartest
different
thing
thing.
each of them did.
Right. It fit them. So I'm always like, I
But they're
always tell
not
kids,
mutually
but
exclusive. You
but
don't
I
have
grew
to
up not
do or
having
not
that
do.
option. I was told you're going to college. You're going to college. Like that's what you had to do. You had to go to college. So it wasn't something like I looked forward to. It's something like I felt like I had to do because I was told you go to college.
Well, that was our parents' generation.
See, so you went into the Coast Guard. Derek,
Right.
you dropped out, you went back, you went and lived life a little bit, right?
No, I was just working.
Okay.
But that's life.
I don't think I
That's life
appreciated
as we know it now.
I
No, I
never,
think I got
I never stopped education and work to do life. It's just when you're young, you can do them all. Hell yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I had no choice in the matter. I didn't get to
Right.
say like, well, maybe I want to be a flight attendant. Maybe I just want to
Right.
do this. You know, I never. It was like you're going to college.
What's
End of
wrong with
story.
what's wrong with parents and teachers in terms of, so Zach, you said this earlier, like, I don't know what happened if I get my degree. I would be worse off. No, there's a lot of things, like when we were talking a few weeks ago about, things with the business and, your role versus corporate things that are happening. If you had a business degree, you wouldn't be worse at sales, but you may understand some of the corporate stuff enough. It doesn't mean it was right or wrong. It just means you would have that understanding of why there's these corporate things coming down on you. And maybe you could deal with them better or more patiently or differently. So like, I don't like the whole you're going to school or school's stupid for you. I mean, literally you could have, like I just said, you could have the best plumber with a little firm on earth with a little minor 2-year degree in community college and his master trade licenses.
Right.
You could smoke all of us on this call with not just money, but balance and life. And I mean, it's not mutually exclusive. You can do both. You can go right into trade and go back later for something that will help you with that trade. You can go right away to get your education discipline out of the way and completely switch trades.
I actually did that.
Still, that degree can help you in certain ways that aren't related.
I mean, I'm not arguing that point.
Right.
Just I was not mature enough for college. My dad's like, I'm not spending whatever it was to go to school for you to become one with a keg and a
But if you went back
couch.
today for something you just simply loved, like let's say you loved history, and it wasn't going to help you.
Why did you laugh? That's my subject.
Well, because
that's why I laughed.
Because it's completely and totally unrelated to what he does. But
it's
let's
my
say you
twin's
love it.
favorite subject.
But if you love it, you'd probably do really good at it, and I could guarantee you, there's going to be in that 4-year curriculum, there's going to be 1 to 5 things you'll keep with you that actually will help you.
And I did. I went to, I didn't go to college, but I went to trade school 10 years after I'd graduated high school.
Okay.
And I got like a 4.0 and aced every test I took and was head of, top of the class because it was something I had a passion for, and you're right. And I do sometimes think, actually at one point, a couple of years ago, I was looking to go to school for cybersecurity, remember? And,
Yes.
And so I did the audit where you can audit classes, and I sat in it and realized I have no idea what they're talking about. I feel like I'm sitting in a Chinese seminar or a Russian seminar because everybody's speaking a completely different language.
Is that why you pace around the back of church with an iPad on your hand?
That's not me.
That's not him.
That's not me. No, I am not cybersecurity that way. No, but I actually looked at University of Michigan. I was going to go there, and LorriAnn and I discussed it, and she's like, I'm not ready to spend $18,000 for you to go to school for something that you're maybe think you could figure out. And the kids who were in the class, this is the kicker. We're all like, 17-year-old. These kids were auditing just like I was. They're like 16, 17 years old. And,
They knew the lingo.
they knew everything that was going on. And I was like, this is a younger man's game. Sorry, our Rottweiler wanted to come in and say hi.
Someone opened the door.
Yeah, Jana did. Because he would have sat out there and barked. So I don't know if you had heard him barking, but he was.
A little bit.
So lay down.
The thing is look at us here in this room, the 4 of us, where we all took different paths. But as we sit here now, I guess I'm probably the oldest guy in the room, but as we sit here now, it's like we all took different paths, different timing, different whatever. But I think if anybody would say, do you feel successful? We would all say yes. And we all
At
took
time.
very different paths to get to where we are.
Sure.
But I think we all believe inside we're successful. Now, and it's weird because at different points of my life, there are people that say, well, he's successful at this point. And I would say, no, where I'm the most successful, I feel, is today. Because even though because of what I get to do, and it has nothing to do with college, right? It has nothing to do with education. Sometimes I look at and Derek, maybe that you can help me out with this. Sometimes I think when you're doing an interview, I think if I'm sitting across somebody who has a degree, 4-year degree,
Sure.
I can say, look, if you can sit in that class that you don't care anything about, but it's required for this degree, and you can live through that for those, whatever it is, 18 weeks, whatever it is, that you sit there and get that grade and earn that credit. You don't necessarily have to know everything that I want you to know, but I know you can learn. You have the ability to learn.
Yep.
And not only that, the ability to learn stuff that you may not even care 100% about, but you knew the end game was you needed this to be successful. And I can work with that. As an employer, I can work with that, right? Your degree may not mean everything to me, but what you had to put in to earn that is what is my foundation that I'm going to build on. Look, I know you learned about all these things in college. Great. God bless you, right? But now throw all that shit away. Because today we're going to learn this, right? And this is how I'm going to teach you how to make money. I'm going to teach you how to do those things. And so the degree was just the avenue that got you to this point.
Well, here's a flip to that. Now, I get degrees. Like I said, we need them. Now, I've watched some of these videos that they're putting out there where these kids have graduated with degrees that I don't even know what they're for, and I don't think they even know what they're for. Do you think, and many countries do this, do you think it should be almost a standard to do military or trade before you go for your degree?
Who are you asking?
There?
I'm asking everybody. I mean, I have two friends. I have two friends who are from Israel. Both of them went right out of high school, went into the Israeli army.
Right.
They have to. That's part of the law over there. They had to. One went off to college, and then he became a police officer, and then he was actually worked his way up and became the sheriff of the town he lived in. And the other one happened to be daddy was rich, so daddy took care of him, and he was able to he was a jet pilot for a while. He was a race car driver. He did a whole bunch of other things. Two different guys, but went through the same things, then ended up together and bought a dealership and ran a very successful dealership. One went back and now still plays over and does stuff with race cars and stuff. And the other one still runs a dealership. They felt that the military gave them the almost the map, the structure and the map, which made them decide how their life was going to go. And I think there's so many kids wandering around and they don't have a map. And that's why I say, I mean, can you force a kid to go into the military? All right, we live in a free country, so probably not.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Would the military be fantastic? Would the military be fantastic for some of these kids?
Yes.
It's better than jail.
It doesn't need to always be military service. It could be, but it could be.
Well, that's why I said trade school.
2 years, absolutely. 2 years of service, right? And I really think that would be, man, there's so much structure. I mean, I did my time, and I tell you, it taught me so much just of how to interact with people who aren't from your neighborhood, how to you know, you don't even, but I mean, let's face it, you don't even have to think. When you get up in the morning, you already know what you have to wear, where you have to be, what time you got to be there. There's no,
Right.
and there is no late, right? There is no late, right? You'll be doing push-ups till the earth spins in another direction, right? No, there
Right.
is no late. So, so, so that part of, and that really never leaves you. That military bearing, once they get it torqued in, it really never leaves you, right?
100.
So I think that it also helps you be less self-centered because you're starting to worry about the big picture. You know, you're starting to see, you know, I'm worried about my buddy. I'm worried about this mission. I'm worried about whatever we're doing, right? And so you realize that you're just a part, but the sun is still going to rise up tomorrow if I don't make it to the other side, right? So there's a lot that I think goes into that, and so you mature. You know, you mature at a different pace, I guess, when you're in that type of arena.
The problem is I have with the military is 99% of the people who go in who probably should be going in for some form of structure, trade, career, go in and they're a grunt and they're just infantry. Well, that does not give you any real world skills. Your son went in, became a helicopter mechanic. He got real world skills, came out and now uses it and makes a ton of money.
Yeah.
You know, when my buddy and I went in, we went in the Seabees and he became a builder. He came out and used that to work his way up to where then he became a lineman for a telephone company and did very successful and retired. Now he's retired, you know. Was it exactly what he went the trade for? No, but he learned how to use tools in his hands. So he was able to move forward in forward thinking. Different route, you know, there was nothing being built when I came out. I didn't want to do anything. What was your MOS when you were in the Coast Guard?
I was believe it or not, I was an engineer. I worked on diesel engines, and that was my thing. And
You never wanted to become a diesel mechanic afterwards?
no, because I mean, it's weird because I did enjoy it. I did my time, you know, but the Coast Guard's so small, you know. Yes, you're an engineer, but you're also on every search and rescue crew. You're also the door kicker when you're doing drug interdiction.
Yeah.
You know, so you're doing different things. And when
Sure.
I got out, no, I mean, that was good, but I wanted to do something else. So I got out and, you know, started driving an airboat and doing weird things. So it was fun.
Do you think though that kids have no direction who need a map should be directed towards the military or trade?
Wow.
Instead of just throwing them into landscaping or you know, I'm just going to do this and make my money.
I mean, you guys are kind of just like looking at this in today's culture and social terms.
Well, we are in today's culture.
I understand that, but if to understand people, you are basically making the argument that even though a child is an adult at 18, they have yet to reach the maturity to make decisions that will help shape them positively for the future, which I agree with you. However, when you go back to the greatest generation, when you go back to the early 1900s, the World War II era, and you talk to your grandparents who had 6 kids and each had 2 or 3 jobs, where you're like, how does that even work? That's 24 hours in a day. Who slept 4 hours and the kids raised each other. Those kids were ready. Those kids were more mature by that age, right? So it's not necessarily age as maturity. It's nurture that has changed too along the way. Where we could say the word coddle, but we nurture and I guess we are so spoiled in general. We are so either spoiled or maybe not accountable for our actions as children that we used to be. What's the
No, I 100% agree with you on that.
So if you're coming to America and you're 16 and you have $10 in your pocket, you got to find an apartment tonight, a job today, and food an hour later.
Right. No, and
Guess
I agree
what?
because
You're
my
not going
father.
to play video games or waste your time. You're going to go at it because there's a necessity and there's real world consequences. So now when we talk about kids, it's almost like we've had a retardation of maturity, right? Where it doesn't matter what class they're in, high class, low class. We have this timeline where it's like, well, 18, they don't know, well, there's a lot of truth to that, but all before you know it, they're 30. And it's like when your grandparents were 30, they had 4 kids already and like
a mortgage and
probably paid a house off already and built it too.
Yeah.
And like the point, I get where you're going because my grandparents came over from the Ukraine in the 1900s.
Yeah.
My grandfather worked. I don't know what he did. To be honest with you, I don't know that I've ever asked my dad what he did.
Probably
My dad was one of 9 children.
Wow.
In grade school, they would take the truck with his brothers, and they would go to the bean farm and pick beans in the morning before they went to school, earning 25 cents a bushel.
Yeah.
And my dad always made the most because he was the most precise and fastest, which is he used to brag about that. He would bring home. And so, you're right. And so when I was in school, my dad taught me the art of working and understanding a hard day and a good earned wage. But he also said, I don't want you to work until it's time for you to work. You need to study, be a kid, play sports. Because I didn't have that choice, which is kind of funny because he played baseball and did a bunch of other stuff. But, so when I got my first job at 14 years old in New Jersey, you got your working papers. I don't know what it is where you grew up, Coach. You grew up in Michigan, right? No,
I grew up here in Florida.
Derek, you grew up in Michigan. I thought you were from Kentucky or West Virginia.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm from Putnam County, man.
I don't know why I thought you were from up in the hills somewhere.
Well, I'm from the swamp, man. That's all.
But in Jersey, we had to get our working permit at 14. And I got mine, and I went and got my first job. I was pumping gas at a gas station because Jersey, you have to pump gas. And my dad was mad at me. And I thought he was going to be proud because I went and got a job and I was going to earn a paycheck. And he says, I provide for this family. You don't need to work. He got mad.
Yeah.
And just like when our kids, and I'm looking at him, I remember thinking in the back of my head, but you're telling me stories of how when you were going to grade school, you were going to pick beans at 5 o'clock in the morning before school, but I can't go pump gas and make my $7 an hour or whatever. No, it's $3.12. Who am I kidding?
I was going to say it was about $3 when I was,
Yeah, $3.12 was minimum wage when I was working. But still, I mean, but he was right though. To be honest with you, I look back, I didn't need a job. I didn't, but I wanted one because all my friends worked there, and it was more of a social thing.
Right.
And I know you started working young, but you were running the ballet. You were helping run the ballet.
Dance.
Yeah, dance. So was that really working?
It was fun.
Yeah, exactly. But chime in, Ellie. You haven't said much. What was your first job?
Babysitting.
It wasn't doing advertising for your father?
So when I was in 6th grade, I had a friend and we made our own flyers, and there was a country club up the street,
which your dad was the president of.
Well, but we went up and we put our flyers like on all the cars in the parking lot, and so I was busy. I made a lot of money babysitting.
Did you get paid for the advertising you did for your dad's dealership?
No,
he didn't pay you.
It was child labor.
Child labor.
She was famous in Sioux City. She was famous in Sioux City. She said, I want to see you in a Kia.
I'd say no.
I know you didn't say that. You didn't have Kia.
I'd say, twinkle, twinkle, little star, you should come and buy my dad's cars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you write that?
So my dad got me and my brother to try to do it. I had no problem with it, but then they got my brother and they were going to do like one of the like March sweeps or something like that. And he was supposed to hand the broom to the general sales manager. And instead he got the guy right, between the legs and was like, I don't want to do this. And he threw the broom down and ran out of the room.
God bless him.
What was your first job, Coach?
My first job, bagging groceries at a grocery store.
Which obviously was not Publix.
No, it was like the local mom and pop.
Oh,
Like now, that was my first like real corporate job.
right.
Now in my local jobs, like in the summer, we'd bale hay, right? And then we would also like I'd go and work on. We used to pick pecans and pick beans and corn. We used to do those kind of things too. Cutting cabbage was no good. That's not a good job. Just in case anybody's wondering if that's a career choice.
No, I think I'll avoid that.
Even as short as I am, that one's no good.
Well, to be honest with you, my first job was landscaping with my dad because as a school teacher, my father would landscape in the summer to make money. Plus, he had a part-time job. He worked at a psychiatric clinic, which used to tell people he was a brain surgeon there, but he wasn't. And I mean, he could have been, I guess, but
Right, absolutely. Nobody would have known.
But as soon as I was old enough to push a mower, he taught me how to cut grass, and the lines had to be straight or I'd have to mow them again.
Oh, absolutely.
Rake yards, bag, all that good stuff. And I realized at that point, at a very young age, that I did not enjoy manual labor, and that was not the route I was going to go.
Okay.
I did not like getting dirty and sweaty. I had lots of friends who did it. My buddy Joe owns a very successful landscaping company in New Jersey. He's had it since we were in high school. You know, that's what he loves to do. He's out mowing every day. Not this kid. No. I'll go sell you. I'll sell you lawn service. I'm not mowing. But
what's he do in the winter?
He plows, and they collect unemployment. Jersey, they collect unemployment also.
Yep.
Okay.
So landscapers up there, it's a whole system. But in the winter he plows and shovels. He'll go take care. He's got corporate accounts he has to go take care of. So if I see there's a blizzard hitting Jersey, I'm like, "Oh, Joey, I guess you're going to work tonight." He's like, "I'm already at it."
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, but he's been successful. Takes care of him and his wife got a great house, great life. So he's got all his toys. My other friend, who I consider like my little brother, started at a fence company at 14 years old when he got his working paper. And now he's the vice president of the fence company. Been there since he was 14.
Wow.
He started out literally digging post holes for fences and, putting fences together, working 12 hours a day, coming home burnt back because he'd take his shirt off but he loved it. And he did it, and so, I mean, the stories go on and on. That's the opportunities I think a lot of these kids need. I think the point I was probably getting at is someone they need the map. Now, is the military the right direction?
How many 8-year-olds need to buy their own toys?
Every one of them.
You sure?
Oh man, my granddaughter. The problem is I spoil her rotten, so that's my job. She needs to start buying her own toys.
Sure, but just again, now let's do it.
All right, but I was not 8 years old mowing lawns. And let's top it off to this. My father, when I worked for him in landscaping, I'd be like, people get paid to do this. He goes, "You have a roof over your head and I feed you every day. You get enough pay."
See, I got paid to do it at a very young age, and then I learned that the more I do, the more I get paid.
Yeah. What was your first job?
Age 7, I mowed lawns. I got my first job with my grandpa at 12, and then I did retail at 15, and then I was a first professional 19. It was like, okay, you mow your lawn, you can mow the lawn and do your chores, you get your allowance. Man, Dad jacked it up to $10 a week, man. This is like early 90s, right? So I'm hustling, and I'm like, shoot, I can.
Early 90s.
My neighbor's like, yeah, I'd like you to mow ours too. And I was like, okay, for 10. And they're like, no, 20. I'm like, well, 15, 20 is way too much. These weren't huge lots, maybe a quarter to 0.3 acres. So not like just normal, for Michigan, not Florida.
Not Florida.
So that just kind of happened with half the block. And eventually anytime people were on vacation or people didn't want to mow their lawn or they just wanted me to do it, that's what I did. And they'd let me do it as much as twice a week. And it was like, okay. So it was just for me at a very early age, it was like, yeah, we'll buy you the necessities for sure. But, you want the video games and, we'll buy you the $50 Nikes. But if you want the $100 Nikes, then that's 5 lawns. Let's go, whatever. I mean, so it was kind of understood that the needs were met, which was really cool. Great parents. They're doing incredible now because they met our needs and that was it. And then the wants were things that you got based on how much you worked versus saving. And so that was the balance. So it never was a difference. Like it never was to me, it was never optional to work because I didn't want to just have my needs. I wanted my needs and then maybe some comfort or whatever it may be. But I guess, I don't know. I don't know if it today where it's like, what the heck is that?
Darryl, he's got a call. It's you, Coach.
Yeah, I got it.
I don't
It was
know
LorriAnn calling
if today is like kids just are there any parents who say we'll give you your needs but your wants you got to work for, and kids go, I don't feel like it, I'll just sit here. I don't know, because if they're just sitting there playing their fancy video game, to me that would have been a want that I had to work for. So every time I'm playing that thing, if I want another game, I got to work for another one. So they just went hand in hand.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
it just was a natural transition of you're not going to die. You're going to get fed. You're going to get your groceries. You have a house to live in.
well, how do we train the kids to understand they're getting their needs taken care of, and if they want something, they got to earn it?
Say no.
How do you know?
Say no.
I don't know.
When we were little, we'd go to the grocery store, and if I was good, I could either get a Slurpee or a donut, probably 50 cents each. Nothing. I never asked for all this other kind of stuff. I knew my mom wouldn't even entertain it. But I knew when I was 14 and I wanted those Twizzlers, man, I'd take my money, my spare change, and I'd walk to the grocery store and go buy them.
Okay.
It wasn't entertained. It was like the expectation is if you're good, you'll get this, then nothing else is even going to be asked for, because the answer is no, till you get sick of asking.
So,
But
okay.
I don't see that everywhere anymore. I'm sure I hope there's plenty of parents that are great, right? But I know there's a lot more prevalence of like, oh, I'll just get him this because he's bugging us, or it's not that big of a deal. Well, when you compound that over 1,000 occurrences over 10 years, it is a big deal. It shapes the entire kid. And all of a sudden we're like, oh man, they're only 20. They can't possibly be an adult in that way. And all of a sudden you're right. And then you have them voting and it's like, oh my gosh, you don't even know what's going on. Like there's so many bad things happen when kids don't learn accountability. And
but the problem is, rewind that a little bit, and then they get dumped into the school's lap.
Right.
And then you have the kids who just, don't care. Like, how many students
Why don't they care? Have you ever not cared when you were hungry?
Well, LorriAnn, you can explain that. Tell them about your one student.
Yeah, I want to know.
It's Obama phone. Obama money.
Gosh, this was a white kid, freshman in high school, F's across the board. I pulled him up. I want to say his name, but
didn't he have a GPA or like a percentage of like
I
zero?
pulled him up and I said, "What do you want to do with your life?" And he goes, "The government's going to pay for me." I go, "What are you talking about?" I go, "You gotta get food." And he's like, "Food stamps." I go, "You gotta get a place to live." He's like, "Section 8. You gotta get a phone." He's like, "I'll get my Obama phone." And so, I mean, like, this kid had it, like, he was just gonna live off the government. He didn't really care. And his grades definitely showed that. I pulled up his grades. I mean, straight F's. Not trying in any class, did not care. And again, a white kid.
Now, is that a cultural thing, or is that a taught thing? And if so, how is it broken?
Yeah.
How has it changed?
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. Yeah, of course it's.
I mean, how many kids do you have? Like, you got to deal with that, Coach.
Well, here's how it is, and I think it comes down to a couple of things in particular. One is, you get in the bottom of the pyramid stuff met, right? And then it changes how your attitude is. I have a lot of inner city kids, right? And my inner city kids, because of their wanting to look like they have more than they have, they will spend a lot on clothes and shoes and jewelry. And dude, they have had the same bed since kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
So, because nobody sees that, right? But they have the best shoes or whatever. So I do see it, and I wish that that we would stop putting so much effort on image and more on substance. But that's where education comes in, because we do know that we have to sometimes teach those lessons. Economics is pretty basic, right? It's wants and needs. So who is going to supply that? Who's going to supply the wants and needs for me? And then, I did this lesson for years about, okay, well, how much money do you make, right? And we would do the $10, $11 an hour, and then we would stop, and then we would do some research. How much is rent? How much is insurance? How much is whatever? And then we would dial it all back. And just like you said, Miss LorriAnn, is we have so many kids that would say, well, yeah, well, rent for you, coach, is $2,000, but for me, it's like $30, right? Because I get the subsidy to cover, whatever. And so, and I said, well, at what point is the bare minimum good enough for you? At what point do you want more? Because at that point, you have to start demanding more of yourself. And that's where sometimes the rub comes in, because it's like, I can kind of just give the bare minimum, and I can learn to live in a sketchy neighborhood, or I can learn to not have every snack I want, or to drive this car that's not so reputable. So you can, but at some point, it's almost a mindset that you have to go, no, I'm not doing this. I'm better. Just like your daughter, y'all, that said, man, I am good at this. And then she breaks out of that shell and realizes, I can make money. I am smart. I am capable. And that's the battle I fight every day, right? I have kids in my office all the time.
Well, part of the problem, which when I was at Workforce, I remember I was trying to teach, and I went to this one kid and I'm like, here, I'm trying to get you to learn this. And he looked at me and said, I'm not here to learn. I just want my diploma.
Yeah.
So when did you lose the ability to say,
work?
get out of here?
Right. But I'm like, well, how does this work? So when we have a generation that they don't see how learning, you never stop learning, right? Like Derek even said it, our whole lives, if you stop learning, you're dead. I mean, I'm learning every day. I learn, so to hear that was so disheartening. And I go, how do you think you're going to earn a diploma if you're not going to learn?
Right.
And he held up his phone and goes, I'll just Google everything. Which sadly, that's the case, especially now with AI.
Yeah.
Oh,
Google
So-
is the great affirmation machine, which
ChatGPT
now allows us to create our own truths in our own world.
Right.
So how
are
you
you
now battling that with the new school and the youngins?
Well, so we had a couple of incidents. So we have, the kids do the work there, but if they're absent, then they get to do their makeup work at home. And we had a couple of kids who came back and completely ChatGPT'd their entire assignment.
Yeah.
And, there's scanners that we can send stuff through and it shows it. And so at the beginning of the year, we have them sign an honor code, that says, I will not cheat. I will not plagiarize. I will not do all this stuff. And they sign it. And so we call the parents in and we call the kids in. We have 2 kids right now because they've done it multiple times. We have a 9th grader who is failing the second, he's getting automatic zeros for the second semester of science because he chose to use ChatGPT. So we're giving it, and as a 9th grader, that's definitely going to affect him going on his transcript to have a solid 0 for.
Now, is that when everything starts? Is 9th grade when everything starts impacting their future?
That's the thing. That's when it all starts. I wish that was something that was told so often, your clock, look, you can go K through 8, nobody cares, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
just yada yada. But then the magic begins in 9th grade.
Yep.
Because like
Is that when they started doing the Iowa or what do you guys take down here in
Well,
Florida?
no, that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
No.
but when did they
No.
start taking those
The minute you
testings?
enter high school, it's game on. Like everything
Yeah,
you
it's
do,
game on.
it goes on your transcript. And that's when public schools, if you're not, like the minute you start your freshman year, if you're not on par to graduate by in 4 years, they're looking for the exit for you. They're like,
Yep.
you should go to workforce. You should go here. They're
Yeah.
looking to transition you out because they lose money. That dollar sign over your head starts to go down,
Right.
and they
And
don't
there
want
is-
that.
and see, and you're 100%. And look, I'm not. We all know education is a business. I am not mad. It's just, but we all know that if you had the same high school principal for 4 years, you were pretty lucky. You are now, because here's what happens: is that clock starts as a freshman. And as an administrator, you got 4 years to get that child from 9th grade to 12th grade and out, right? So if you don't, at a certain rate, if you don't graduate at 98%, 95%, you're going to be a middle school principal, right?
They're gonna boot you
So
down.
you're going to lose your spot, right? And we
Mhm.
all know high school principals make more money than middle school principals. So you know the pressure's on, right? So so it makes it tough, because we in traditional schools, that middle school is going to dump, right? LorriAnn, you and I are in a different place. We have to kind of recruit our kids, right?
Right.
We have to go out and hunt our kids. Now, for me, the guidance counselors do a lot of the work, right? Because I just have to remind the guidance counselors I exist, right? And then they know, oh Jesus, we got 12 kids that are not going to graduate this year, and I really like my principal, so I need to find them a place to go. Hey, coach, you got any seats over there at workforce? Because I got 12 kids that you know, the great kids, right? They are working too much. They're not coming to school enough, or they haven't passed the fast best. And look, I need a place that'll help them. And so that's where we fit into the whole business of education, right? Is because that way that administrator moves that kid along. I like to call it the last call at the bar syndrome. You ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here, right? So the kids get that from their guidance counselors. And so then they come to private schools, they come to charter schools, and then then a lot of times they finally get the encouragement that they need, because you do have teachers like LorriAnn who really care about the individual, that aren't under the pressure of, oh my God, I got to give this kid a 70, otherwise, you know, the administration is going to write me a bad review and they're going to throw me out, right?
Right.
Where we don't have to worry about that. I can have a 5th year senior. Hell, I can have a 6th year senior, as long as I can show that young person is making progress. Now, if you have
What's the age they have to graduate by?
22, if you have an IEP.
Is it 20? Is it 21 if they don't? Because we had,
Well,
when I was there, we had a couple 21.
we had a couple of 21-year-olds, and they serve by, and this is the way I've been kind of doing it now that I've become the director, is I really don't want any students being able to drink with my teachers, right? So once they get to be 20, I really I usually sit down with them and their parent, because, you know, high school is not a career choice. And so we have to get this piece figured out, and find out if you're really serious, or if I need to get you to Orange Technical College and get you into that GED to a trade school program, right? because I don't want to.
Oh, is Orange Tech kind of like Lake Tech, where you guys used to send them from?
Absolutely, it is
Okay.
exactly the same. Where they can earn that GED, but they can also there's Zach, I don't even know. There's got to be 50, maybe 60 different trade programs that they have. It's really great. In fact, I had that conversation with a young man today.
Where Curie works.
Oh yeah. That's right. Our friend Jeff's wife works there.
So it's really they really doing a lot of good things here. You know, it's like Valencia. Does a lot of good work with trades now. It's just that Orange Tech really it's less expensive for the student.
So if you know that you are not going to graduate on time, but you know what you want to do, you can go to Orange Tech, get your GED, and then go to the trade school there to become a welder, auto mechanic, auto body. Okay. So it's not a last choice. It's not the end of the world. It's no, I don't have time to go to school. I got to get my GED so I can work.
Yes.
In some instances.
I have over the last year or so, I have really fought about that whole where your last choice kind of thing, because I really want to. I don't think that highly of myself, but also too, I also want to know that it's not over for you. I know you're 20 and you are working a lot, and you're even working more, even more than the days that I offer you. So because you're keeping the lights on, or you're feeding your, okay, no names. So I had a parent-teacher conference, and a lady comes in with her son, and we're like, he's not coming to work till he's not coming to school till third period. And she said, hey, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm only here just to kind of find out what's going on. She said, but I have 9 kids. And he is number 2 of 9, and he kind of takes care of things for me. So whenever he gets here, he gets here. And I was like, okay.
How do you combat that?
Yeah. How do you, look, you got something going on in your house, right? So I tried to,
did you offer to buy the lady cable or something? Good Lord.
9 kids.
We're kind of too far. We're too far in. Well, a long time ago, in a land not so far away, we created this problem, right? We took away the ultimate motivator, and my dad taught me this, and he's right. So I don't care what y'all say. But we took away the threat of going hungry.
Yeah.
No, just now. Keep talking. Go through every scenario we talked about. There's no consequence. Why does he have to go to school? Why? He's doing the right thing by his mom, right?
Mama's tired. She was working. Got to take care of the babies.
There's no threat of hunger.
No.
Someone's going to take care of you.
You hit it with there's no consequence.
There's no consequence.
When I was a kid, if you were tardy to class, you got written up. And if you got written up 3 times, you got detention. There was like consequences.
And if you got detention, you got a big spanking at home.
Yeah.
Oh, right. But my thing is now is they don't care. There's no consequences for showing up late. There's no consequences. Right. First period, at every school that I've been at, it was like a revolving door. The entire period.
Did you connect
Kids
showing up late to your ass
in.
getting smacked by your parents very hard?
Well, no,
because I did. That's why I didn't want to show up late. I
compare it to your job. I mean, I don't know Darryl, if I kept showing up 50, 60 minutes late to my job, missed all of first period, and just walked in when I felt like it, how long would I keep my job?
Well, same question, Derek. If I came to work for you and you had customers pouring out the door and I moseyed in around 10 a.m. and you've been open since 8, how long would you keep me working for you?
5 times 1 month, you're done. Yeah. And that's generous.
My point.
Wow,
so
that's
very generous.
But
yeah, because you can't get anyone to come on time anymore.
Yeah, this is
You
sad,
can't.
I
sad
try
but
to
true.
make consequences for assignments. Okay. We had a project and I told these kids the projects, I gave them 10 days to work on it. I told them it's due on this day. I mean, every school that I've done at, I always have one or two that try to test the waters to see, and I stick to it. I even had a parent one time argue with me, and I said, let me put it to you this way. I go, if I was working at a company and my boss told me I needed to have this and he needed it for a client presentation on this date, do you think he's going to care if I bring it in the day after?
Nope.
Right.
I said, I'm not only trying to teach them the academics, but also a life skill that when you have a deadline, you need to meet it.
Well, I'm going to use a prime example, and this happens to me. This is the real world. It happened to me. We have appointments that are scheduled for certain times. I had an emergency come up on one of my jobs. I had to rush out to it. I was in constant contact with the customer, letting them know. The wife calls me. I said, I am literally 1 mile away. She said, don't worry about it. We'll go with another company. I said, I've been texting you, letting you know what was going on. She goes, well, you were supposed to be here at this time. So I mean, that's a little, to me, that's a little ridiculous, but that's how people
we're
believe.
perpetuating this huge circle of damage. We're not teaching kids consequences or having an outcome that will affect them.
Well,
and then you let me finish this. And then you're having consumers treat professionals like crap.
Yeah.
And then you're having consumers expect above par customer service. And you throw someone in a $15 an hour Taco Bell job, they don't care. There are no consequences. They can't find anyone else to work. You're treating them like crap. What do you expect from that person? The inputs they've gotten are total shit. So that's why your bean burrito looks like shit. Because you have no consequences. You have no repercussions. You can't be replaced. You can't be replaced in the most entry-level job there is. And everyone who you're serving, your money source is treating you like you're not inhumane. So, that's what I see. Like for someone, so to go back to that example, Zach, again, you're communicating, right? It used to be as a consumer, well, we can grant them someone being human as long as they're transparent, vulnerable, and honest, because I know that's what I'm going to get. Nope.
Right.
Don't matter. Okay, cool. But like when that job goes bad, you're not going to be the one to bail them out. You're not going to be the one to bail them out. You don't care. Like you're like, holy crap, I don't like you, but I can't not like you, but I just don't like you. I got to go. Like you just run from that. So we expect this perfect world, but we're not willing to hold people accountable to it. We're not willing to be nice to people. We're not willing to treat people like human beings. We're not willing to let them go hungry. We're not willing to do anything. It's just this big threat. It's this big wheel of threats. And guess what people do after a while? They get numb to it, and they're like, it's an empty threat. Mm-hmm. And like they laugh. It's like when you laughed at your mom spanking you until the dad came in the room and started.
Let me tell you what, that happened one time, and then I learned how to cry, whether it hurt or not.
Well, Darryl, we know the ongoing joke was you send them out, and they're going to come back with a teddy bear and a Jolly Rancher.
Jolly Rancher, absolutely, and be back in my class before I breathe, before I've calmed down.
Right.
Well, didn't that happen? What school was it that the student hit the teacher, and because he had an IEP, that he was back in the classroom before the teacher was even back from being. He didn't get expelled. The teacher.
Hit the teacher.
Yeah, punched the teacher.
Yeah. You should go to jail for that.
Well, but here's the problem. They get labeled with, it's called IEP, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And if you're labeled with an IEP, you can get away with almost murder, I guess.
Oh, yeah. At Wekiva High School, when I was teaching there, I had a drug deal go down right in the middle of my room, and got the deans up there. They took the guy who had the drugs and the kid that bought the drugs and pulled him out of my room. The kid that was the drug dealer had an IEP, so he only had 10 days of in-school suspension and was back in my class. The other kid got expelled.
Nice.
Explain to us, what's an IEP?
What's an IEP?
Individualized educational plan. So
what does it mean? What does it mean?
It means kids who have like learning differences, you come up with a plan. So they get extra time on tests. They get things read to them. It tells you like what you have to do to accommodate them.
How come they didn't have that when I was in school?
Are they disabled?
No.
What are they?
It could be for ADHD, dyslexia, a speech impediment.
Okay.
You know my
So
favorite
it
story
could be
about
all
80
sorts of-
State.
But does that give you the right to do a drug deal?
Right. I'm
Exactly.
not disagreeing with you.
Is this
Well,
is this
we're
like in a
saying-
is this like in a Disney race when there's a 400-pound person who's an athlete with a disability because they're 400 pounds? Dude,
I don't know.
Well, you ran a
it
Disney
took
race.
me a
Did you have
second
that
you don't have
happen?
a disability, you're just
Hold on.
overweight.
Exactly.
Like
I-
so,
I've got-
so my
you know,
point is,
people- I love when people
does an
say I'm
IEP excuse you from being a rule following, law abiding citizen? Well, you're autistic, so you can go ahead and punch.
So
this.
On or off.
Well, that's
Hold on.
that's
Dar-
different.
Well, Daryl might know because now you're a director. So with an IEP, I don't think you can. If you're going to expel them, it has to be like
Is it?
they brought a
It's-
gun to
there-
school,
there-
or they.
Actually, you can still level 4 expel them, but then there's an extra layer in there because you do have to get the ESE department in there to either explain how their IEP did not create this behavior, right? Like the drug deal, I don't understand, Miss, because like the IEP should have not saved him. You only get 10 days, right? That's all you get.
Right, which he got 10 days.
But
But for a drug deal,
but the drug deal should have had I don't know, because like I said, I wasn't there and I'm not there, but
if a drug deal goes
usually-
down in your school, and the kid
no,
has an
you just gotta
IEP,
go. Yeah.
you're out, right?
So like we sort of play by OCPS rules, but we also play by coaches' rules. So like if you bully, right? I'm gonna call your mom. I'm gonna have her come withdraw you. If you fight at my school, I'm gonna have your mom come get you, right? And you're not welcome back.
Right.
Because like I'm too old to be breaking up fights. So we are we play by the same rules to a certain point, but then we are a charter school, so we can kind of create our own.
What does charter school? What does that mean?
That means that we fall under Orange County Public Schools. Like when you graduate from Workforce Advantage Academy, you get a Orange County Public School diploma, right?
Okay.
So that means that our curriculum and our standards our educational standards are the same. So
Okay.
if you take biology at Jones and you take biology at Workforce, it's the same class, right? Now our grade recovery system is the same. So we use Edgenuity for both, right? So that way we're matching rigor and we're matching content. So that way, at the end of the day, our 24 credits are the same as any Orange County public school, right?
Right.
So, but what makes us a charter school is for a couple of things. We're only 2 grades. We're only 11th and 12th grade, and we only go to school 10 academic days a month, right? If you have a job, because your job becomes part of our curriculum. So now, if you don't have a job, then you go to transition, and transition is like a life skills class. And what we're trying to do is in our life skills is trying to take you from high school student to young adult, right? So we're going to talk about what it takes to make a budget, pay your bills. We're going to talk about business law. We're going to talk about what it takes to buy a house, pay your taxes, read your W-2, and kind of get you ready for life.
This is what is needed.
I really think that we do a lot of good. And I tell you, if I wish I could set up a cam in my office and tape some of the kids that come in, because brother, my day's a giant roller coaster. I get kids that say, "Coach, I got that job. I've been trying to get out there. SeaWorld's been hiring a lot of our kids. Shout out to SeaWorld." And then I also
We ran into one of your students last time we were at SeaWorld, didn't we? Yeah.
so then I get the, "Oh damn, coach, I'm pregnant," or I get the, "Oh damn, coach, look, I came home last night and my mom's not there anymore." I don't know where she is. She won't take my
Mm.
call, you know. So I don't even know how long I'm going to stay there. Or, coach, I'm living in a hotel. What is there? What can we do? It's a roller coaster of a day every day, if you can imagine. And the thing is that I think it's hard to wrap your head around is I'm only around 300 kids. I don't have 3,000 like at Jones or at Olympia. I only got 300, and every day it's something. And I wish more people could come and spend, even with you, Miss LorriAnn, come spend a day in your classroom to see what that's truly like, because we have, that I think it would help bring us back together as humans, because sometimes I think we forget that we're all humans, right? So we're going to say, oh no, your parents made these choices, so now you just got to live with their decisions, right? And then how do we go from that to, it's time that we need to start raising folks that are cycle breakers, right? And we got to
Right.
break that cycle. I need you to get out and get a job. I need you to find you and know how to sit for an interview and show up and not be late those 5 days a month, so I don't lose this job, right? And we need to make sure that all these messages are being sent, because it's so important that not only do we need to start landing these jobs, but we need to start keeping these jobs. We need to start getting through this high school piece so we can break this cycle. So parents are not just, incubators and sperm donors, right? We gotta break that cycle, and somebody's got to care about these kids, and it's got to be more than just teachers, right? Because teachers are starting to become hard to come by, because there's fewer and fewer. I've been looking for a business teacher for, Lord, man, I don't even know, 4 months, and I've interviewed, I can't even tell you how many, but I also know when I sit down and talk to you, I know my population, and I know that whether you would make it or not, right? It takes a special soul.
We
Uh,
we
yeah.
interviewed 56 teachers last year to get one.
Yeah, yeah, girl. In the last 4 months, I've probably interviewed 20. I got 0
Mhm.
because that I just don't think they'll fit.
Right.
So the and to sort of start wrapping this up a little bit, um, is there a moral to this story? I don't know. Obviously, we need more educators, and the problem is with some of the kids coming out of college. Number one, some of them have been indoctrinated to lean a different way than maybe we want, and number two, these are some young bucks coming out of college, and I don't know if they're ready for the world. If they're ready for these students that they're about to face. She's like my little sister. She's a teacher, and she worked with elementary school students. And
Okay.
she's a little kid. She's small. She's a small statured female. And one of the fifth graders was IEP, had a bad temper, and he lost control and smashed a desk and shattered her leg. And she's like on disability, and she has PTSD from so she can't even go back in the classroom anymore. I mean, she said, who would have imagined a fifth grader ruining my teaching career?
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary.
But I think, Darryl, you would agree. Teaching isn't a job. It's a
No,
mission.
it's a mission.
And
So if you go to work as a teacher for a paycheck, you're there.
Right.
Oh,
You're
you
not there
won't
for the right
laugh.
reason.
You're not going to last.
You're not gonna last.
That's why you've got to have the right heart. You've got to,
Derek, you should become a teacher.
you definitely have to have the right heart. You have to care about these kids more than just their education. You said at the beginning, like, teachers are in charge of other things. We are, there's days where I'm a nurse, I'm a mom, I'm
Yeah.
all these things to these kids. I'm a social worker, I'm whatever they need me to be. And then down somewhere below, I also teach them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So and that's what we tell people, like when we're like, understand, you're not coming for a teaching job. This is a mission. You're here to love these kids, to pour into them and raise them up to be champions, to send them out into the world.
So,
And if you can't handle that, like, thank you.
so
Thank you for your time.
why are the kids who want to become teachers not being taught that?
Because they're not teaching that in school. They're not.
No, it's all about pedagogy and doing
Right. So I tell we got a brand new teacher right out of school last year. And I said to her, I'm like, you can just throw all that stuff away that you taught. I go, the minute you walk in and have, we have smaller class sizes, but I'm like, you have 10 to 12 living, breathing human beings in front of you. Whatever they just taught you means nothing.
Yep.
Everything they taught you was in theory. Now this is where it really comes into play. Like it's.
So can you be taught? Or is it get thrown? Do you get thrown to the lions? That's the only way to figure it out.
I think this is where I think LorriAnn is 100% correct. Teachers are made. You have to understand that that's your mission and that's your heart, and you have to go in there every day, and that is your stage. That is your kingdom. That classroom is my domain. This is my house. And you have to control that room every minute, and it has to be your house. You have to go in there and understand that little Timmy with ADHD over here is gonna probably act a fool, and little Sally over here is not gonna be able to understand, and so you're gonna have to scaffold this a little different for her, and you're going to have to teach that room. Now,
so you have to know your audience to teach to the audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
it changes every day. It changes every day and every period.
Lesson to first period and second period to two different classrooms and do it completely different.
I used to say all the time, I taught English across the board, but what I taught first period to seventh period it wouldn't even look like the same lesson.
Nope, absolutely, 100% spot on.
Well, and I appreciate Derek has told this story before. One of his professors said, "Would you rather me be your professor or the CEO of a business?" And I'm gonna be the real deal that way, or I'm gonna be your teacher. And maybe teachers need to do that and go, look, let's real world talk. Or do you want me to teach you from a book? Yeah. Do you want to know what it's like out there? Do you want to know what it's like to go to your first job and literally open your paycheck and get that punch in the gut when you realize, what do you mean I got to pay taxes? What do you mean? What is all this crap they take out of my...
I think it works when a child associates a action with an actual consequence that hurts them.
Well, I'll never forget.
So for example, for that class, like if our presentation sucked, he would just interrupt us in like 3 minutes and say, "You're wasting everyone's time. It's an incomplete for today. You have 2 days to redo it, or it's a fail. Yeah, if you redo it, you can still get a full A. You get one chance, sit out."
And do you think you learned better that way than you would have if he was being a teacher?
For that class, for sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't have time for no value conversations in business, and therefore the things I do have to be doing something valuable.
Well, and I'll never forget our second eldest daughter, her first paycheck, and she opened it up and she says, "What is this? What is Social Security? What is?"
Yeah,
it's like, the government taking this out, and she's like, well, I'm not paying for those people. She goes, "I got to pay for people while I'm get a job."
Yeah, you're sweetie.
She went from
like liberal,
and then all of a sudden she was like, now she's a conservative.
Now she's
wearing MAGA hats
and she's all Doge, and But what are you going to do? I mean, I get, and I think that's unfortunately sometimes, Derek, to kind of touch on what you said about consequences. Unfortunately, I can't even speak. The consequence it comes when you get a job and Actually, I had that phone call the other morning.
Well,
Ash called me. Says, how come they took this much out of taxes?
Listen,
You know.
listen. You learn how to ride a bike by falling off and scraping your knee and probably breaking your bone.
Yes.
If you didn't do that in your first time on a two-wheeled craft was a motorcycle when you were 30 going 90, the consequence, because you didn't take the original discomfort to learn that, is death.
Sure.
And so we worry maybe as parents, maybe as educators, maybe as whatever, or mentor, we have this thing in the back of our head to some extent, no matter if you're a good parent or horrible, but whatever you are, that, you don't want your child to suffer. Right.
Right.
So if you don't want them to suffer, you don't want them to get hurt. But if they don't learn small pains now, the effects of that, taking the real world serious and understanding they can go to Hungary and they can die in a car accident and they can hurt somebody.
So
here's where we are, right?
Here's where we are.
What do you think happens?
Here's where we are. Remember when you were a kid, maybe not so much you because you're still a kid, but remember when we were a kid, Darryl, if your parents got called in to have a teacher conference or a meeting, even worse with the principal, you were getting a foot in your rear end at least.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. But nowadays, the parents are coming in screaming at the teacher because they're saying it's their fault.
Yep.
Right.
And that's where I have to 100% agree with Derek. Consequences need to come back in place. Obviously, I'm not drop kicking a kindergartner across the room so they learn not to mess with bigger people. But, they do have to learn. I'll go back to when my Emily was a baby. She'd go do something silly. I said, you want the pow pow? And she knew that was okay. I don't do that anymore. So we don't do that anymore. And that was the consequence. But now kids be like, I'm stealing something. I'm taking it home. Oh, it's just candy. Don't worry about it. If I stole a piece of candy, I'd be getting beaten all the way to the store owner, having to pay the store owner for it, and then beat all the way back to the car. There was no joking. Anyway, so I think not to beat a dead horse. I think we really need to just understand. I don't even know how the education can be fixed. I think prayerfully it can be one day. I do see a lot of changes going on. I also see a lot of people that I know who are leaning more towards the private schools and looking at that. But then you get your same problems with the rich kids in the private school. So so you got problems everywhere. I just don't know how we can revamp the whole thing other than we got to start at the bottom and clean all the muck out and let it drain out and start over again.
Hunger.
Well, hey, let's do the Hunger Games.
There's a lot to that, Derek. There's a lot that people aren't hungry anymore. And, that does change people's gumption, right? And sometimes
it's like you can't put this all on one group. You can't put this all on education. You can't put it all on parents. It used to be they were both the adults, and the adults ruled the world. So, parent or educator, the educator maybe
the problem is the parents
today, but there was a transfer of adulthood in agreement of. Despite ideological differences, there was still an agreement of overall adult domination. And
the problem is a lot of these parents
have opinions and says. Kids did what they were told.
Right. Well, the problem is though, but Derek, here's the problem. Most of these parents are only 14, 15 years older than their kids. So they're still kids themselves.
I think you see it across the board.
Well, I mean, we came from a different generation.
LorriAnn and Darryl would know better than that, but I don't know if you can just pin it into like one stereotype. Can you?
Well, no, there's many things. I mean, the destruction of the nuclear family, that's a big one. Taking the dad out of the picture, that's another factor.
Taking the church out.
Oh, well, 100%. Taking prayer, taking Jesus out. I mean, thankfully, I'm in a school even in my school there we have issues, but like there was one day I was like, you know what? I'm putting worship music on. Go find a corner. Go get your journal. Find out what God's trying to talk to you. And next thing I know, 10 minutes in, the kids are crying. Whatever it was broke off, and then we were able to go to do class. You could do something like that in a public school where lay hands on them. What's wrong? Pray for them. But you can't do that.
You did.
I did, but
You
I
did.
was under the radar.
You were.
Well,
She's not.
But
burning.
it doesn't need to be blatant. I mean, like I walk behind their desks and like touch the back of their desks, or just they don't even know I'm praying for them and laying hands on them.
Sure.
But
So Daryl, if she ever put her hands on your shoulder, she was praying for you. Because,
Thank
know.
you.
I always pray for you,
All I
brother.
can
You know
say is
that.
thank you, right? Lord knows I need every prayer I can get. I ain't embarrassed. So
All right. So the bottom line, the only way to fix this whole issue is Jesus.
I said at the beginning, ended it there. It's Jesus. He needs to come back. Trump said he's bringing prayer back into school. You better implement it, Coach.
I'm okay with it.
You
Look,
start out your day. Pledge of Allegiance. We do the Pledge of Allegiance. We pray. We worship. That's how we start our day.
you know, I think there's a lot of prayers that happen in school. Some of them for whatever reason, right? Just usually before a test. But there's always,
There's that
sometimes-
Christian community. I ain't praying for that. I'm not sending that up to the creator of the heavens
No,
and the universe with my name on that. I'm not praying for that.
I saw Cat Williams the other day says, you said because I believe in God, I don't believe in science. God was always with me in front of my science test. I was praying to Jesus. I passed this
right,
thing.
absolutely, right.
So you know, but it does break my heart because I do hear the stories because obviously I have someone on the front line.
Yes.
And you know, and even in the Christian school, there's still shenanigans, but that's going to be everywhere, I guess. It's not as bad as
No, I don't
as
get,
the story
I don't-
she'd come home from.
I don't hear cuss words anymore. No cuss words. No real, no fights. It's
I
just,
still watch the video of her taking the gun off the kid at your school.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, there are some scary moments.
She chased the kid down, took the gun away from him. I said, "What are you doing? Trying to get shot?" She's like, "I ain't scared. I'm taking it."
He said, he goes, "What stopped that kid from shooting you?" I go, "The Holy Spirit."
Yeah,
Absolutely. God,
100%.
I
right?
don't know what else it was.
And then at your guy's other school, at least she was I think that the cops used to call you the pot detective because you nailed more
Not
kids.
the cops, but yeah, I'm checking in the backpacks. I'm the one that's going to smell the weed. What do you want?
You know, and contrary to what all these children believe, weed smells.
Oh, horrible.
I know they don't think
You
so,
stink.
but yeah.
Our kids at one point in time years ago thought they were slick and hid a bag up in the laundry closet far in the back behind something, and the whole house smelled like it. It was like,
Yeah.
you guys are stupid. You guys are dumb. Get out of my house.
Yeah, it's like
Nothing that a bonfire and some dryer sheets can't fix.
right, absolutely.
We got away with it.
Well, everybody
Not
did.
that.
You know.
I didn't do the green stuff. Just talking the the standard tobacco stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't. I wasn't a big wacky tobacco guy. But anyway, well, let's wrap this up, guys. Listen,
Daryl and I have to get up early.
dude, she's already falling asleep over here. I'm elbowing her.
I can relate.
Yeah.
It's bedtime.
But Daryl, thank you so much. LorriAnn, thank you so much for being on our show. We appreciate it. Make sure you guys go to nobrainershow.com to find all our stuff. We're on YouTube. And our D-Rex himself has got YouTube trending big time right now.
Who's the man?
I don't know.
I don't
What-
know.
what-
Whatever
do you-
society
what do you
tells me.
What do
I
you
am.
got trending, my friend?
He came up with this idea, the genius that he is. Let's do shorts.
You guys want to keep talking?
You gonna go?
So,
I'm
Just
tired.
say goodnight.
I love you, Coach. I
Love
love you,
you,
Derek.
bud. I'll see you soon.
nice.
All right.
I love you too, honey.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it. Guys, once again, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. And until next time, we are out. Love you.